they need talent. The Panthers clearly need talent. And I'm not interested in relitigating things that Scott Fitterer had to say back in the spring and the summer of what kind of group they thought. Because, again, they thought they had a wide receiver group that they can plug a quarterback into. They had a defense that, again, one quarterback away from being competitive. It turns out it's the opposite. I'm not going to sell on Bryce Young just yet because I think it's fairly obvious after the 0-6 start. The wide receiver group outside Adam Thielen has not been that good. The offensive line has regressed. Their defense is so hurt they can't stay on the freaking field. That this is not a complete group that you can truly judge Bryce Young on. So you go out and you get better. But here we end up with the monkey's paw. In order to get Bryce Young, you gave up a lot. And now you don't really have assets to get better. They have cap space, but they don't have draft picks. How do they do this, Julian? And that's your answer. I was going to say, there's your answer. Done. Clip it.
Sigh.
Done. Big sigh. How do they do this? Big Julian Council sigh.
It's interesting because a lot of people want them to go trade good players for draft picks. Yeah. And we have seen they traded Christian McCaffrey. They used one of the picks, the second round pick last year, to move up to get Bryce. They used the third and fourth round picks they got from San Francisco to draft DJ Johnson, a 25-year-old project edge rusher out of Oregon, who's only played last week in their loss against the Dolphins. So you see, you give a good player, and what do you do with the draft picks? With DJ Moore, of course, they traded him to be able to get Bryce, not really for picks, but it depends on like what they do with those picks. Like I understand, okay, hey, the best way to build your team is through the draft, but you have to nail the draft. And you look back at some of the classes that he's had so far, it's not like Scott Fitterer has done that. And when you're saying, hey, let's get rid of some of the first round guys that you have, that's the only time they're hitting. Like they hit on Brian Burns. They hit on Christian McCaffrey. Of course, previous regimes, JC Horn, if he's ever healthy, I think they could hit on that. It's the day 2 and day 3 picks that are killing this team so far. And you look at this past year's draft, like Jonathan Mingo, I haven't been impressed by him at all so far, the second round pick at Ole Miss, but it's not like he has to be great right now. But considering the position they put him in, they kind of needed him to be a factor. And right now, he's not really a factor. Terrace Marshall, a couple years ago, second round pick, has yet to be a factor. Frank Reich forgot to play him in the week 5 loss on the road against Detroit. Like, I don't know how that even happens. That's like the real issue for me. Okay, the best way to improve your team is by drafting better players. The problem is, even when they have draft picks, I think they have like 6 or 7 this year, they keep missing out on that. They had an 11-man draft back in 21, and the only guys that are really contributors off of that team are JC Horn, who's never healthy, Tommy Trimble, who's like your third string tight end, Terrace Marshall, who's your 4th or 5th wide receiver, and Chuba Hubbard, who right now is your best running back. The rest of those guys aren't on the team. Like, you can't have that many bites of the apple and get 1.5 impact players.
Yeah.
I'm laughing at let me ask a real question. Do you think Scott Fitterer under Matt Rule was actually making the draft picks, or do you think that was a big Matt Rule energy draft room?
David Tepper came out and said he would never have an arrangement with a head coach like you have Matt Rule. That basically told anybody that was listening, that was willing to listen, that a lot of that was Matt Rule. Like, do I think Scott Fitterer decided that, hey, man, let's go draft the long snapper? Like, you heard the conversation. You think like the Kalen Barnes kid out of Baylor, who's a 7th round pick, didn't make the team, ended up, I think, in Miami. Like, that was a Matt Rule decision. And you even look at this past year's draft, DJ Johnson, Ajero Avero is the one who really wanted him to defensive coordinator in Carolina. It's not all on Scott Fitterer. And what David Tepper, as active of a participant as he is as an owner in the open circuit out there that Stephen Holder of ESPN.com covers the Colts, and even Rich Eisen are saying that he's the one who really wanted Bryce Young. How can I blame the general manager when the owner is that involved and clearly is influencing decisions? So I think Matt Rule had the majority of the control, especially in 21. I think Scott was the one who was making all the trades and wheeling and dealing because Matt doesn't know how to do that. But as far as like the actual player selections in 2021, I definitely think that was Matt Rule. That was an 11-man class. In 22, maybe it's a little bit of Scott Fitterer, but I don't know. I think it was mainly Rule.
Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast, joining us here on Ovies and Giglio on the Heaster Automotive Group hotline. All right, we'll get out of here on this because the big news of the week is that Frank Reich gave up play calling. I think he's doing it stubbornly. I don't believe him that they were going to make this decision at some point in time.
We were going to do it all along.
We were going to do so long. No, you weren't.
No, we wouldn't.
No, you wouldn't have. You would not have done that. So now I feel like there has to be a realistic view of what Thomas Brown as the offensive coordinator can do with Bryce Young, because I think Joe and I are in agreement on this, and I'm sure you kind of on the same level too. The season's sunk. All right. I don't want to hear Frank Reich talking about, well, anything can happen. We have 11 more games. No. The season is sunk. So now your number one goal is to not break Bryce Young. If he is your guy, you cannot break him. And I do think this move did need to happen. Results aside, I'm more curious about how they kind of change up what they can do with the offense and not be so vanilla. Bryce Young, I'm not going to go, I don't want to go like full let him cook, but clearly he can do a heck of a lot more than what Frank Reich has allowed him to do.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what it looks like. I still feel like they have some of the same issues with Reich that they're going to have with Thomas Brown. Like the offense line, in theory, can get better once Austin Corbett comes back. I do caution people to understand the man tore his ACL back in January. He has been rehabbing this entire time. He's only been practicing the last couple of weeks. He has to come off PUP next Wednesday or he's out for the rest of the season. So I expect that he'll be activated next Wednesday. I just don't know how much that's going to really do. Cade Mays seems to be fine there at left guard. I think you got to kind of give Zavala some time because he was a liability when he was actually healthy. And God bless it, that did not look like it looked when he got carted off a couple weeks ago. But the O-line, I still think they're going to have some issues because Icky, he's regressed. He's got to start playing better. So I don't think the offensive line is going to all of a sudden get better. The receivers are what they are. They're not going to be trading for a receiver. Adam Thielen's the only guy that Bryce clearly trusts. But is there a way to maybe utilize the tight ends more? Thomas Brown was working with the tight ends last year in Los Angeles. Of course, he worked with Sean McVay, and they've always, used tight ends, whether it's been Tyler Higbee or Gerald Everett when he was with the Rams. So let's find a way to get Hayden Hurst, who they paid a ton. They paid him about the same amount of money they paid Miles Sanders and Adam Thielen, and he's barely getting targeted in the game. Find a way to get him involved. Thomas Brown, former running back. Maybe they actually would establish an identity of trying to run the football. When they were leading that game on Sunday, it was because they were running the ball. Then they got away from that, and they tried to be a pass-happy team, but you can't block.
Yeah, they tried to run with the Dolphins, which I thought was hysterical.
Yeah,
like,
you
can't do that. You cannot do that with the Dolphins.
No, you can't keep up with them, and you also you can't block enough to be able to hold up for a sustained period of time in a game. I'm curious to see how it works. Like, I think it's the best decision, and I agree that if they were 6-0, this is not happening. He can say whatever he wants. David Tepper, after his first year of the ownership here in Carolina, had Ron Rivera become the play caller on defense and also run a 3-4 scheme. So that tells you there's already a history of him interfering and having the weekly Tuesday meetings. You tell me that this didn't come up on a weekly basis. If fans on Twitter are saying, hey, we need a different play caller, if Josh Norris, who's obviously very smart, covers this, if he's saying, hey, give Thomas Brown a chance, you don't think the owner is saying the exact same thing? So Frank can say whatever he wants. David Tepper wanted this to be the case, but there's going to be a learning curve for Thomas Brown. I think it makes sense to do it now. He's learning. Bryce is learning. So why not move with the future? But the offense is not going to get any better.
Yeah. I just had that lightning bolt when you said that about the 3-4, because it's something we haven't talked about. That the given was going to be that the defense, remember, it actually was pretty good.
It was pretty good.
Even under Rule, it was pretty good.
But
then they switched the alignment, and I've always kind of thought, well, why did they switch the alignment?
Pittsburgh.
Are you telling me that they switched the alignment because the owner used to be involved with the Pittsburgh Steelers and thinks that you're supposed to play a 3-4 regardless of what your personnel is?
Yes, exactly. Yes. I'm telling you, that's what happened, because they tried in 19. They were bringing back Cam. They got Gerald McCoy. They went and got Bruce Irvin. They tried to build a defensive line for a 3-4 scheme, and they had an awful running defense. What do they have this year? An awful rushing defense.
My God.
It's absolutely, because he was from Pittsburgh, run a 3-4. That's real football and defense. That's why they run it. I'm telling you, that's why they run it.
Are they going to get the corpse of Dick LeBeau to come out there and coach the team?
Oh, maybe, man.
Maybe Cower? Get him out of the booth?
Do you think, we'll close on this.
It's bad.
You mentioned Josh Norris. Do you think David Tepper in a weekly meeting with Frank Reich goes, all right, Frank, explain this. See, here's explain this to me. And he's showing a GIF from Josh's Twitter account. You think that's what's happening right now? He's like, Josh says, just what, you can't play with these guards. Frank, tell me what's going on here. You think he's doing that?
I imagine he's on Twitter and he sees all that stuff and he brings it up. Does he actually show the phone image? I don't know. I doubt it, but I know he's listening. I know he's out there watching and listening to everything, and he's out there asking Frank Reich the same questions that Panthers fan 8069 is asking on Twitter.
I love it. Absolutely love it. You think Tepper's got a burner text line to Kyle Bailey? You think that's what's happening?
Oh God. I told Kyle a long time ago that he needed to stop looking at those texts.
Yeah, don't we all, man? Don't we all? All right, Julian Council, Locked On Panthers podcast. Go check it out. Good stuff every day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. My man's got to talk about the Panthers, and he does it. All right, man. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.